Okay, so we're talking about AA, AAA, and whatever. Where would Platinum fit? Ugh, gosh. I mean, ultimately, I don't know. Oh, gosh, and who do I choose? Do I want to go for the book? Do I want to go for AoE? Do I want to go... I don't want to go for Poe. Poe sucks. Garlic is terrible. Because Mortatio gives me extra... Imelda. I could start with the wand. The problem is... the extra projectiles from him is really good. Extra AoE from him is really good. Let's plan this out a little bit. So I want both pigeons. I want the book. I want Santa Water. So that's 5 for start plus 1 more. And then the pigeons are going to combine down to 1. So that technically leaves space for 1 more, which is probably going to be the axe. So in that case, yeah, actually we gotta go Imelda. If we want to get the full build. Assuming that disrespect as that son of a butt, we gotta start over immediately. That sucks. Okay, let's go back over here. Pichon, perfect. How do you combine pigeons? You combine pigeons by getting both of them up to max level. And once they're at max level, then they, let's just... Oh, the pigeon's actually pretty good, even early if you can bring it to bear. The problem is getting it to actually hit shit is hard. Okay, King Bibble. I'm gonna try a little bit to max out the build early. Ooh, low-level Bibble is tough. What do I think of the new pigeon? It's incredibly good. It's like wild good. Actually, I think we want the bracer. Okay, so AA, AAA, Indian, whatever. And I think ultimately it's kind of easy to I guess it's easier in my mind to maybe distinguish between them. AAA is almost always like big company, higher budgets, big marketing, can potentially headline at a convention or a press showcase, and nobody's gonna look at it weird. AA is a little bit more kind of dubious and maybe has the biggest like crossover between both groups for obvious reasons. You definitely can have some games that really are like AAA quality coming out of a AA studio, just because they put in all of that extra effort. So AAA is more corporate, basically. Yeah. I honestly, that actually is probably a decent way of putting it. That you're not going to see a AAA game come out of a non-corporate entity at this point. The budgets are just too damn high, and the stakes are also too damn high. You know, you might run into a couple that are trying, but almost every like big AAA blockbuster is going to be a corporate creation. Whereas I would say AA is kind of that weird one where they're very clearly like an established company that has a decent amount of funding behind them, but maybe not the same level of clout, either name brand recognition or just budget. Oftentimes marketing, sometimes team size, and a bunch of other things. But even then, that's a little random too. Easiest example I could give is actually very specifically Fall Guys. Like, Mediatonic is not a small company, but they make indie game, or not indie games. They made mobile games up until Fall Guys, I believe. And so it's kind of like, well, what do they count as? I'd still probably put them in kind of in that AA territory, where it's an established company. This isn't. This sucks. I'm just gonna go for the crown. I don't usually go for the crown. We might have to reboot this one if our RNG just decides not to support this. That's okay. And then indie is kind of the small things. If you can put the studio in like a person's basement and it doesn't look ridiculous, then you're probably kind of in the right territory for indie games. I used to want to say AA companies are just the companies that AAA companies buy out. Then Microsoft bought Bethesda, and now Activision Blizzard. I'd still say that that's true, though. That AA's are usually the ones at the top of the acquisition list when it comes to corporate buyouts. I'm currently trying to not move at all from the beginning. This is going to take some time to figure out. Oh god, good luck. I think you'd have to do Poe for that one, just because you wouldn't be able to get EXP otherwise. I might join you on that after this run. I'm doing a more regular run on this one, but that does sound kind of fun. What was I gonna say? But you don't generally see a whole lot of like larger companies buying out indie studios. You might see kind of like Devolver buy them, but I feel like that's just because it's Devolver, and Devolver is a completely different thing than most companies. And I'd actually say there's probably a bunch of indie publishers that are going to kind of edge into this weird AA territory, not because their games got bigger, but because they just acquired so many damn indie studios with enough clout that they just kind of fit that bill. So Devolver, I wouldn't exactly say Supergiant at this point, because Supergiant is kind of its own thing. Candelabra? Oh yeah, we already have the Candelabrador. What else do we even want? Because we need the Rune Tracer, and we need the book, but I can get the other thing. Okay. What am I missing? I'm missing Ebony Wings. I'm missing the axe. There's one more weapon that I was kind of noodling over. Or did I miscount at the very beginning? I might have miscounted at the very beginning. Do I want to grab the attract orb? Actually, I do. Because part of it is we can get the tome here, so we have a lot more wiggle room without having to worry about stuff. I don't remember. Like I said, if I have to restart to get this right, then so be it. Okay, we do need the Spellbinder though. So yeah, if I can lock in this build sooner than later, then I don't have to worry as much. And that means I can get the book early. Max out the wand at least to some degree. Let's see. But yeah, so I'd also say like Supergiant, while their games kind of have more of an indie flavor, is starting to verge into that AA territory. One of the main reasons why I'd say so is because for me, an indie developer very much feels like if they make a bad release, they're gone. They disappear. Maybe they get eaten by another studio or something like that. But there's kind of that high stakes feel to indie development that like I don't like. I feel like that's also true of AA, but kind of for a different reason, that they just went too big. Whereas like indie always has to kind of feel like shoestring made by a couple of people. And maybe that's it. That specifically for an indie game, you have to feel like the each of the people working on the project had a notable effect. So, for example, Supergiant, Gen Z's art style really carries through into every single one of their pieces. Admittedly, they have a couple more artists now, and so I'm not going to say losing that identity because her style is just that good. What am I missing? I got to think on this one. Because we can still get the tome, we've got the Candelabrador, we've got the speed. We don't really need the extra projectiles, that we kind of do. Do I get the spinach? Yeah, let's get this spinach. I don't think there's anything else that I specifically need. We got the rune tracer, which accounts for the evolution. And yeah, we can get the axe eventually. I can see the indie title being the one where the team is small enough that each person's influence is very clear. That's not a bad way of defining it. Yeah, I think I'm going to stand by that. Whereas, like, for a double A game, you can still have that. You know, where the individual people really can matter. Kind of in a variety of ways. But it's not to the same extent. It's not like you can sit down and point to an art asset, or like every art asset and be like, man, you know, I really love so-and-so's art style. Like, that kind of works with a couple. I'm specifically thinking of Airship Entertainment and Ruined King, Darksiders Genesis, and really pretty much anything related to Joe Madureira, who is like an old comic book artist that started Vigil and then went on to make Airship Entertainment after THQ shut down. Hey, and thank you, Tonokami, for the Prime sub. Thanks so much. But so, like, Joe Madureira's work carries through, and, like, the studio that, the studios under him almost always do a very good job of replicating that into the game, but it's very rare for that to be true in, like, for AAA products where you really can point to one person and be like, they are responsible for, like, a large reason of why this thing happened. You say Hightail is indie or AA? At this point, AA. For two reasons. One, I think they're a bigger team. Two, they got acquired by Riot. Now, normally you could kind of say that, like, well, what is even Riot at this point? Because they're really only famous for, like, one game, but they got a freaking TV show at this point. Like, that is... Riot Games itself is a AAA publisher. There's no escaping that. They're just kind of one of the weird ones because they're so nichely tied to one product. And aren't one of the, like, the legacy companies, like Blizzard or EA or, you know, whatever. But so Hightail, in essence, could fail and it wouldn't sink the studio. Because they'd be able to take the loss and then very potentially, you know, turn it around. Riot is a media company masquerading as game dev. Yeah, kind of. I've never seen a game company so tied to one specific franchise ever, and that includes Square Enix. Like, Square Enix has a lot of games that are not just Final Fantasy, that are actually pretty competent. It's just, you know, Final Fantasy is their main one. Game Freak. True. Okay, you're right. I will take that one. Though, not for lack of trying. Game Freak has very much tried to escape Pokemon and has never succeeded. Mostly because all of the other games that they make are terrible. Like, excessively so. I always feel kind of bad about it, but still. Yeah, Square makes a lot of great games under the radar. Einhander on the PS1 is godlike. I really want to play Vagrant Story. Like, I'm really looking forward to moving, because hopefully I'm not going to be doing any more, like, big moves for a while. Because I want to pick up a PS3 so I can finally justify playing, like, Vagrant Story and a couple of other, like, big... do we want to just grab the axe? I think we've got everything that we kind of need in this vein. Not even Pokemon is great. But I love the idea of Pokemon, though. I think the biggest problem is that, I want to say Nintendo and Pokemon need to kind of accept some other new blood, new ideas here and there. Vagrant Story is actually part of the Ivalice timeline. It shares a universe with Final Fantasy Tactics and 12. True. Let's see what we get. That's some good shit right there. What was I gonna say? So yeah, it is true Vagrant Story is actually a Final Fantasy game, but it's not listed as such, and frustratingly, unlike pretty much every other quote-unquote, well, no. It's frustrating. Square Enix is really good about getting all of their mainline games available on every platform, but the moment you get outside of mainline Final Fantasy, it's just like, you want to play Vagrant Story? No. Good luck finding that anywhere, bucko. Get a PS3. We put it on there. Because I really want to play, Final Fantasy Tactics again. and specifically War of the Lions, but that's only available on the PSP. And like, obviously I'll probably just emulate it, maybe buy it digitally. I mean, I own the game for the PlayStation 1, but that's not quite the same. Let's see, let's finish this one off. That was the Legend of Mana HD Remaster. I actually liked that. It had a bad difficulty curve and some issues. Oh, War of the Lions got ported to Android. Oh, sweet. That makes my life easier. What I want is the Crystal Tactics one. Crystal Tactics? Was that the Final Fantasy 12 one, or is there a separate one? Ow. I want to evolve the Bible, but I want to evolve the pigeons, which might screw me over a bit here. The Final Fantasy 12 Revenant Wings on the DS, because that was the one I got that for Christmas like a long time ago and really liked it actually. Oh, hell yeah. I don't know where this came from, but it's very appreciated. Give me that sweet EXP. Okay, more in Ebony Wings. Oh, there we go. Might be thinking of Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. Final Fantasy Tactics Advance was real good. Honestly, the entire Tactics series was great. I found A2 to be a little bit of a letdown, mostly just because they only added, like... They added a race, but they didn't give it, like, a whole lot of classes, so it was just kind of mediocre. But, like, the rest of the improvements for the game were actually super solid. But I never finished it, and I feel kind of bad about that. Because, like, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance was, like, one of the first games I ever knowingly put 100 hours into a game. I'm pretty sure I put way more into, Diablo and StarCraft, but that's because of custom maps more than anything else. They added 2 races, but they only had 4 jobs apiece. I really wish they had gone further on that one. Because, boy, if they had, it would have gotten incredible. My other fear at this point is if I went back to play Final Fantasy Tactics, I'd be a little bored. I'm kind of impatient nowadays. That I love me some games, but any game that like makes me play for 100 hours, I usually get a little bored on. And that it would be kind of nice to. I'd almost want to say have a Final Fantasy Tactics game with an optional auto battle, like mode that you can just flick on. If any of you guys specifically played the most recent Disgaea game, was that 6? That game had an auto battle mode where your characters would just fling themselves at the enemies. And I'm gonna be honest, I really did miss out on all of the gameplay, but I didn't really feel like I was missing on much. It was nice. It was just kind of like, alright, cool, another level, go kill. And my units would just like run in and destroy, and it was satisfying. Yeah, there are also Final Fantasy Tactics light games. Yeah, there's Fate Tactics and, gosh, what's the other one that was really, really good? That Shell and I played but never finished. I don't remember. And that's upsetting me a little bit. Fate Tactics was amazing. I found the difficulty curve on Fate Tactics to be problematic. Felseal Arbiter's Mark falls short of scratching the itch. I actually thought it was great. I thought Felseal was almost everything I wanted out of a Final Fantasy Tactics game. I think it was missing a little bit because I didn't like the art style as much. The really, really kind of comfy chibis from the Tactics series just felt really good, whereas the Felseal characters looked a little bit too Gaia Online, which I think held it back a little bit. Which is unfortunate because that's such a stupid reason to dislike a game, but that's where I was at. I'm hoping Arcadian Atlas releases soon. I don't think I've even heard of that one. I really need to keep better track of games. It's just there's so goddamn many. Let's see. I want to talk about scratching game itches. Where's my base building RTS for the past 6 years? So, interestingly enough, I'd actually say that the RTS genre split a long time ago and hasn't really recovered. I'd also say hasn't recovered due to the loss of Blizzard. And then also the loss of Westwood. EA eating Westwood is probably one of the biggest travesties of a company acquisition I have ever seen. Factorio. Yeah, but screw Factorio. I already talked about that one. We won't rehash that too much, but the dev for Factorio is not a good dude. But I would say automation sims do scratch kind of that itch. Same vein. Let's go for the spinach more than anything else. And there's the book. We don't have as many projectiles, so this isn't actually as good as it could be, but is fine. But beyond that, if you want base building RTSs, there is oh god, what was it called? I played it recently. Riftbreaker. Riftbreaker, very much base building RTS. It's just veiled under kind of a wave survival game. Same thing with There Billions. Also base building RTS. Where the heck are my pigeons? Maybe I don't need them. Let's see. Yeah, Final Fantasy Tactics plus base builder RPG equals the last spell. And I'll admit, the actual base building not so much so, but it does have kind of those elements. It definitely has the Final Fantasy Tactics feel that I'm looking for, and the weapon variety on that game feels generally pretty good. I hope they expand it yet further, but hopefully Microsoft and Blizzard release Warcraft 4. Oh gosh. I guess that happened in, during a time where I wasn't, like, in a good spot to commentate over it. I have so many different feelings on it. I saw a lot of people that were, like, very concerned with the, Microsoft acquisition of Blizzard just because, like, it's not good for the industry when you have all of these companies specifically, eating each other and unifying down into like just a handful of brands. And I think that's actually like a really big and good concern to have. You know, it's not a good thing to have, you know, one company own half of the AAA industry. However, I mean, I've had a lot of time to think about the Blizzard or not the Blizzard acquisitions, but the Microsoft acquisitions, largely due to the fact that like some of my favorite companies have already been eaten by Blizzard, namely Obsidian and Bethesda. I don't know if I'd say I like Bethesda so much as the IPs that Bethesda owns are incredible, and I've always kind of felt like Bethesda was ignoring them in a bad way. And so on one hand, like, yes, there are kind of issues with the idea of one company consolidating all of these. At the same time, yeah, those were bought by Microsoft. I know. And so I've been thinking about this for a while because I love those companies. And it was weird for Microsoft to buy them out. On the flip side, I hated the people that owned them. I hated what they were doing with their products. Like, I love Obsidian. I think they made great games. The biggest problem with Obsidian was always that they had I don't know if it would be terrible management. Their biggest issue was not terrible management so much as just they didn't have money and were always having trouble getting enough to keep the lights on. And, you know, especially after Bethesda screwed them over for Fallout New Vegas and a bunch of other things. Awful budgeting, dreaming a little bit too big, having kind of wonky scopes, and so on and so forth. Like, I can't blame Obsidian too much, but it's definitely one of those where it was just kind of like Obsidian was on shaky grounds, and I was honestly relieved when they got bought out because when I first saw the headlines, they were a little vague, and so I just saw like Obsidian something something, and I'm like, ah, shit, did they finally shut down? Same thing with In Exile. You know, when In Exile got bought out, I thought they were finally shutting down. Not that they got bought out. And so I was actually kind of relieved when they did, because I feel like of all of the current owners that they could possibly have, you know, there are some other ones that would be decent, but frankly, I'm glad it's Microsoft over like 2K, because I feel like 2K is spooky. I'm actually kind of worried about Embracer Group buying a bunch of studios, just because Embracer Group is 2K and Gearbox and a couple other things, and they're like kind of scary. Same thing with same thing with EA. I don't trust EA at the moment. I don't want to say that I like trust Microsoft, because I do not trust a single big company to handle anything. But if there was a studio to own any of these places and not screw it over, Microsoft currently stands pretty high on that list. And yeah, Xbox has been pretty good to its sub companies. Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. That like, I don't like the fact that Microsoft picked them up, but I frankly was under the assumption that Blizzard was going to just die slowly and then get bought out by somebody anyway. Because as long as Kotick is in charge, and that is actually a legitimate concern I'll get to in a second, but as long as Kotick is in charge, Blizzard is never going to be on top again. It's just baseline rule: the man is too creatively bankrupt and morally bankrupt to be able to run a studio well. The best he can do is wealth acquisition and extraction from a fan base, which is not actually a good thing. That I seriously do not believe that that Blizzard would be able to right itself before hemorrhaging anybody and everybody that's actually willing to make it work, which would just result in Activision Blizzard becoming a COD machine, and that's it. Yeah, morally bankrupt is worse. Oh, absolutely. And like, I've worked under very few people, and I've worked generally with very few people, but I'd much rather work with somebody that mismanages the company than is actively evil. Because somebody that just mismanages, like, you can still work with and be around the person and have them be reasonable. But if the person is like legitimately evil, and I'm pretty sure Kotick fits the bill across the board, like there's no there's no way that kind of person is going to be able to set a good direction for the company, much like Mark Zuckerberg or a lot of other people. Kind of in that same general vein. And yeah, how is Kotick evil? I mean, so realistically, a lot of it is kind of weird hearsay, but I know specifically he had threatened a woman over the phone. Was it with like death threats or something else? Like his involvement along a lot of those like Blizzard controversies were always kind of like pushed to the back and or separated out a little bit. But I know he specifically got like smacked around for a couple of things in court because of his actions. But I also know he was in like oh gosh, what's his face? The dude's little book. Told a lady that he'd kill her if she kept reporting SA. That's what it was. Yeah, Kotick is a terrible person, makes Zuckerberg look human. Gosh, that's hard to do. Yeah, threatened to have his assistant killed. Yeah. And, like, frankly, we do not need that in the games industry. And so, as long as, like, he was going to be in charge of the company, especially because he had to have known about all the allegations being laid against just so many different people at Blizzard. Like, he had to have known and seen and just did nothing because it just wasn't important. And it's like, you can't have a healthy company under that kind of leadership. It ultimately rots in a bad way. We might not actually level up the pigeon here, which is weird. There's also destruction of evidence on his orders. And I mean, if you guys saw during the thing over the summer, last summer, I guess, the Fran Townsend letter kind of talking about like, I'm a woman of the company and I'm not experiencing any of these problems or anything like that. That just absolute horrid sanctimonious garbage he wrote that and then had her write it. Or he might not even had her write it. He might have just sent it in her name. I don't remember. But like the dude wrote that letter and like that's so busted. It'd be like me having Shell write a letter proclaiming my innocence over something, and the whole thing just being damn lies. Like, it doesn't make it excusable no matter who it is or anything like that. And so, yeah, specifically, like, that's not healthy leadership for a company. There we go. Yeah, and Kotick was even trying to buy Kotaku and PC Gamer to shut them up so they'd stop reporting about it. Like, yeah, the company was never going to recover. And so, if somebody had to buy out Blizzard, because the board of directors certainly weren't going to get rid of Kotick, who is going to do it? Oh gosh. We got the Rainbow Burb. What do we grab as our next don't move, kill shit build item? I mean, do we want to go Pentagram? Yeah, let's just go Pentagram. I don't need anything at this point. I'm busted. Let's go get this stone mask before I go anywhere. I go Rune Tracer, but I don't have any projectile benefits, so it's not... Rune Tracer is actually pretty bad. If you notice, my scythes are pretty terrible, too. It's like he didn't understand two simple words, free press. And admittedly, in, like, especially in the US, the idea of free press has been kind of... it's not really a good thing. Or, it's not really a thing here. I mean, the fact that, like, Jeffrey Bezos... I don't know if you guys have ever seen the headlines where it's like, here's why it's bad to tax billionaires. And it's like, you just know Bezos had them write that. Had them. It's the Washington Post, I believe, is the company that Bezos owns. And it's like the same thing with all of the other big media companies. Like, somebody owns them and they all have agendas, and it kind of sucks. Because you don't actually really have a whole lot of free press. You have some kind of free agent reporters who actually do good work, but they're rare. And then there are the nut jobs. I don't want to talk too much about the nut jobs because that makes people upset. It's subjective. Not really. There's a lot of things that you can kind of be objective about, and I would say corporate control over all media companies is very very objectively bad. But so same thing with, like, you know, any kind of article that is, like, apologizing for Bezos's existence out of the Washington Post. Like, you very much can look at that and just be like, okay, so that very clearly is, like, just corporate propaganda, because they, you know, there's no way you can have an objective article written by a person. And so, yeah, going back to Bobby Kotick trying to buy out PC Gamer or Kotaku, I mean, it pretty much would have just destroyed both companies just to maybe try and salvage his reputation. Wouldn't have worked, and I think it would have gone poorly. But for me, you know, hearing about this stuff, I'm just glad somebody bought them out that I can at least somewhat trust to not just do immediately horrid things. And that's kind of where I stand, where it's like, it's not good to have one company own everything, but good lord, Blizzard was sick and needed something to fix it. Subjective and free press at this point. Ah, that's what you mean. Okay, got it. I've had a couple of people advocating for it's good to not have free press, and it's like, what? That's bad. Though, there's also the notion of, like, free press just being able to say lies, which is not great. I don't remember which company it was, but they spent, like, months lying about something, and then 5 minutes apologizing for it when they were they had their pantsuit off of them for being wrong, and it's like, that's not okay. Yeah, you really have to make up for the damage more than just kind of saying I'm sorry in a 5-minute segment. NBC, Fox. Chances are, probably both of them. Yeah, corporate ownership in media is unfortunately necessary to survive. A media organization needs private sector sugar daddy, government support, or lives hand to mouth off of subscriptions and meager ad revenue. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I want to go too far into that. I need to do way more research on that, and because I don't generally deal with real life stuff apart from observations of like, man, this is not a good thing. Like I can easily say that about like, yeah, Bezos probably should not be the one making any kind of decisions at a news organization in regards to, well, I guess the way I would describe it as a content creator, if I make a video sponsored by anything, you know, like I have to say, hey, this was sponsored by whatever company. You know, that's just inherently part of the deal, that I need to disclose who my sponsors were. And realistically, I find actually quite a lot of creators don't disclose nearly enough. You know, it's just like, this is sponsored by so and so, and then they just move on. But like, you know, when it's like, from my perspective, you know, if I say like, hey, this is sponsored by so and so, then my opinions aren't fully my own. That I had to temper myself slightly, or maybe say some things based on like whatever they want me to say. And I still try very much to have like an unbiased opinion, but there is still that aspect of like, yeah, they gave me the key, or they paid me $200 to talk about this game, like that. Ow. Oh, the boss is there hiding behind the pigeon again. Oh shit, he didn't even die from that. There it goes. Sneaky Skullboys. It wasn't even Sneaky Skullboys, it was Sneaky Boss Man. Alright, let's find a good spot to... Let's eat some floor chicken, actually, real quick. Yeah, this is going to be a no movement run, but that didn't work. It's okay. Alright. I'll just go, like, right here. And then I think I'm fine. That's what I like about German media. They have a contract with the state to report educational and get paid for it, so corruption is less likely. Nice. But, so for like a bigger company, for example, if they specifically say, or a bigger news organization or something, and if they're reporting in a biased manner, they often don't actually have to report it, or they don't have to really acknowledge like, hey, this was, you know, this was at so-and-so's behest. And I don't know, a long time ago, somebody once said, like, man, wouldn't it be nice if you just saw, like, every person's corporate donors in politics, in media, and so on and so forth. So, like, oh, what was it recently? I know there was something about, like, Northrop Grumman, the weapons contractor, had, like, written an article, or, like, it had presented by Northrop Grumman as part of the article at the top. And it's, like, it's freaky and weird, but it's, like, at least that's kind of honest. And so, what's a good example? Ooh, that's a big one. But like, I don't know. It'd be easier to trust people and media organizations and whatnot if it's just like, hey, this, you know, Bobby Kotick buys out Kotaku. Which, in retrospect, now that I'm thinking about the name, that actually almost would have been perfect if it wasn't for the fact that he's freaking creepy. But, you know, if he bought them out, at the beginning of every article, they had to write, hey, this article was written by Bobby Kotick and is just credited to me. You know, if that was like the legal requirement or something, like, it really would kind of make you sit down and look at it and be like, oh, yeah, I guess I should not read this article because there's no factual honesty for it. Politicians should wear a vest and jacket showing who's sponsoring them while campaigning your office. Not a big enough jacket. Yeah, God. You'd have to look at everybody, and then anybody without a jacket is either like, without a jacket that is covered in sponsors is either like actually a good person or lying through their teeth, and you'd really have to look at them twice. But yeah, like a race car driver, absolutely. I mean, hell, I should be like that to some degree. You know, if for example I was doing like a public presentation, of like, say, what's a good example? I don't know. Say I was up on stage at like a big event and it was sponsored by so and so. Maybe I should wear the jacket saying, hey, this was sponsored by, you know, Microsoft, and they want me to say good and nice things about Microsoft. Like, is it gonna make me look like a clown? Yeah. But at least you'll know. then again, on the flip side, then you kind of run into the situation where everybody's like then the perception is always just like, all right, everybody's sponsored by everybody. And I almost feel like it would kind of it would be the counterpoint. You know, if you turn around and realize like these people are all sponsored by so and so, then you'd kind of have this moment where it just doesn't matter anymore, that it would be like too much exposure. It's kind of like why it doesn't matter when you look at race car drivers. Like, that's just normal now. I almost feel like it needs to be not normal, and then anybody that does that has that extra scrutiny. I almost feel like it would be interesting if everybody had like banners behind them. So, you know, if whatever person is giving a speech, they have this just giant, like, you know, medieval style banner, the old like house banners or something like that, ceiling to floor, and it's just like covered in logos based on size, how much they've sponsored. I always enjoy when a streamer is sponsored by a game they're playing and then start laying into all the bad stuff on the game, then the sponsor shows up in the stream only to be told their game sucks. You really have to be careful with certain streamers, because they will do that. And so I've actually come to, I don't want to say blows with some companies in the past, but I've had some arguments with companies over like them trying to micromanage everything that I say. So I definitely had one that sent a contract over that was like, hey, you need to do things in this exact manner and talk about this, you know, this, and then 3 minutes in talk about this, and it really was this like weird script that they were sending on to me. And it was odd because it was a game that I liked too and would have presented fine, but because they couldn't trust me not to talk about the game perfectly, it was this like just whole thing. And I remember being so off put by it that I actually just canceled the contract because it just wasn't going to be worth it for me. But I definitely know of like a number of streamers who, yeah, will get, was it Nova Drift? I think it was Nova Drift. Chimeric had talked about this, that he had specifically hired a streamer to stream his game. And I think this was before I had come along or something to that extent. And the streamer was just bad-mouthing it constantly. And just, like, almost unjustifiably so from the perspective, I guess from my perspective, just because I love Nova Drift and I think it's a fantastic game. And so it's like, usually the kind of base agreement is just like, yo, you just don't badmouth whatever game or thing, because it's going to make you look bad and make them never work with you ever again. And yeah, some companies will absolutely straight up refuse to pay you in these situations. And so, like, I can kind of understand the clause of, like, do not badmouth the game. Wow. I think this is the highest level run I've ever done. Oh, because I've got the crown. And the stone mask. Holy shit. Yeah, go figure. That's what let's see. The ones that bother me are the ones that take contracts are, I missed the original comment. I only see the context for it. And there we go. Bam. Yeah, 151. I don't think I've ever gotten that high. And Vandalier got even higher DPS. Also, interestingly enough, and not terribly surprisingly, Pentagram actually got really high DPS there. But that's because I only had it for the last third of the run, and I kept proccing it because it kept leveling when it was like much higher quantities of enemies on the screen. But at the same time, Pentagram ain't bad. Santa Water, though, like, shockingly good even at this point. Okay, what was the next run? Oh, time for Ultra Challenge mode. Let's try not to move.